Good afternoon, everyone. We have a small presentation. Small corporate presentation.
Almost two-thirds of the country's population resides in rural areas, while only 27% doctors and 33% total healthcare workers operate there. This results in smaller health problems getting neglected and going on to become big ones. More than 60% of total health expenditure are out-of-pocket expenses, which raises the risk of low-income population falling into poverty. We at NSWAST decided to address this gap and serve rural and low-income segment population through our affordable and accessible solutions. Thus, our vision was born.
खांसी बुखार है, ये कोई वायरल फीवर है, तो इसके लिए मैं आपको मेडिसिन लिख के दे रही हूँ, ये आपको लेना है.
A vision of digital health inclusion for all. Preventive and primary healthcare coupled with micro-health insurance. This ensures holistic support to the beneficiaries. We provide telemedicine and telehealth services in patients' preferred language. Digital as well as SMS prescriptions are sent to each patient and their electronic health record is also maintained. Customers are well supported at every stage of their health journey. Our in-house team of general practitioners and specialists is available 24/7 to ensure timely and convenient services. As we grow and scale up, our greatest reward is the smiles we see.
जब भी मुझे या मेरे परिवारजन को किसी भी तरह की कोई तकलीफ होती है तो मैं ज्यादातर इसी क्लिनिक का सहारा लेता हूँ और यहाँ मुझे ये लगा कि मुझे काफी राहत मिलती है अक्सर तक. तो मेरे हर कदम पर मुझे इनकी तरफ से काफी सहायता मिलती है और मैं इनका शुक्रिया करना चाहता हूँ.
A lot has been achieved, but much more still needs to be done. Our vision, digital health inclusion for all, is an unwavering one. The challenge may be formidable, but we are fully committed to turning it into a reality.
Thanks for watching the video, and we just wanted to walk you through our journey, what has been for about last 3 years. As you might have seen, so we have covered roughly, we have acquired 50 lakhs customers, we are touching about 1 crore lives, and that's largely, 3 years journey which has been. Total, we're covering across the country around 330 districts out of 730 districts in India, and we're able to build more than 1150 e-clinics. So e-clinics are basically a physical setup near to microfinance branches or within microfinance branches, where the microfinance customer and their family can walk in and get treatment, basic digital OPD and basic medicine can be covered through these e-clinics. So we are successfully running about 1150 e-clinics across the country. These are the partners. We have successfully partnered with 35 microfinance institutions, NBFCs, SFBs, and we have access to about 3 crore customer base across the country. Some of the states we are able to open more than 200 clinics. Some of the partners which has been like Muthoot, Microfinance, Tata, Swatantra, we are able to add more than 500 e-clinics across the country. We focus on the Sanrakshan, Swasth and Suraksha, which is basically a 360-degree preventive, primary care and the protection model. So we focus not only on the doctor, telemedicine or e-clinic. We start talking to the customers just before that, the preventive care, that how to remain healthy, how they focus, can take care of their family, health through the better health awareness. And then we move on to the telemedicine solutions and the e-clinic. We can get an access to primary care, primary doctor care, and the access to health care and the basic medicines. So then, which is, our solutions which are available are typically of 365 rupees for the entire year. So the family has an access to our solution, and the entire family is covered for about 365. And then at the end, if they get hospitalized, we also help the customers and the families in getting their claims settled through us. So this is what our 360-degree approach is. We have, our focus is on high tech and high touch. Though we are focusing doctors, as I told you, right? So we cannot place doctors in all the clinics. We are largely covering panchayat in the villages. So these doctors join virtually. However, we have nurses appointed at each and every clinic. Then who basically meet these patients, do the basic tests, basic vital checks, and then doctors come virtually. Today, on a day-to-day basis, we are treating more than 7,000 to 8,000 patients every day. On an average, we see a walk-in of around 5 to 7 patients at a clinic every day. We see the walk-ins. So, which is one of the large. We also have our e-clinic again. We maintain an electronic health record. So far, we have generated more than 15 lakhs prescriptions in last 2.5 years, which again generate, and they are the very encrypted data which we manage, but we take care of the family health record and family history. So which again, we are treating them as far as like any of you visit Medanta, Apollo, so we treat them at par with those kind of facilities. And we also have a follow-up mechanism where the customer and their family, typically the weekly and after a week, after 3 days, they typically have a follow-up by our pharmacist and the agent. The customer has also access to these solutions on the app, but as I told you, we largely serve the rural and the microfinance segment and the micro insurance micro segment. We definitely, it's a very high-touch model. They can, meet our nurses on the ground. They have an assisted model on the phone, everything. But in case of app, they can also use the solution and access to the solution through the app. This is so far our presence. We have built about, as I mentioned, 1150 clinics covering more than 17 states. More than 8,000 walk-ins every day at our e-clinics. We are talking about treating more than 20 lakhs patients every year. And this is just the beginning. So what we also added for the patients who were getting treated virtually by the doctors, at the event they want to meet a doctor. So we started organizing health camps. Today we are touching more than 1 lakh lives through the health camps as well. So today we have a doctor network of doctors who visits our e-clinics on a monthly or a quarterly frequency, and they get access to, again, they meet the doctor in person. And this is the solution which we have built, and we are further enhancing the healthcare solution for the microfinance industry. We are highly compliant to the Indian compliances, as well as we follow HIPAA compliant, which is the US equivalent to the US FDA regulator. We also focus on a lot of, our 70% of our doctors are women, so a lot of, there is a centricity in the women. 70% of our customers are also women. So our solutions are customized to treat women, and typically we cater to child and women both, but we serve all the segments as well. This has been our journey in the last 2.5 years, and with the support of our microfinance, our banking, our rural banking partners, we further announce more. Today we'll be crossing touching about 50 lakhs customers. We are touching about 1 crore lives already. Our clinics are about, we have 1,200 people team. We have built about 1150 clinics. In next 2.5 years down the line, we plan to open 10,000 e-clinics, which will be covering 10% of India. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Neeraj Maheshwari, for a wonderful presentation. I now invite Mr. G.G. Memon, ED and CEO of Sa-Dhan, to present a memento to Mr. Neeraj Maheshwari. Mr. G.G. Memon, please, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now start with our session 2, which is on achieving environmental, social and governance goals through the social stock exchange. I now invite the speakers of the session, Mr. Shishir Sinha, Associate Editor, Business Line. Dr. H.K. Bhanwala, Chairman, Multi-Commodity Exchange of Indian Limited and former Chairman, NABARD. Mr. Sadaf, Sayeed, CEO, Muthoot, Microfin Limited. Mr. Sanjoy, Ghosh, COO, NABCONS.
Especially after having a good lunch, attending a session and talking about ESG and EPP, all these things are very difficult. But what we will do, we will try to make it more, what we can say, more and more engagement of the people in this discussion so that we could get a good result of this particular discussion. At the outset, let me pay a special tribute to late P. Satish, former Executive Director of Sa-Dhan and veteran of microfinance industry. During the last 2 meets, including one before pandemic, he invited me to be part of the annual meet, and I still remember he used to sit throughout the session and honored me on both the occasions. Thank you, Satish sir. Very well. Now coming to this year's session, the seed of this particular session was sown in the Union Budget of 2019-20, when Finance Minister Nirmala Sitaraman had said, and I quote, "It is time to take our capital market closer to the masses and meet various social welfare objectives related to inclusive growth and financial inclusion. I propose to initiate steps towards creating an electronic fundraising platform, a social stock exchange, under the regulatory ambit of Securities and Exchange Board of India for listing social enterprises and voluntary organizations working for the realization of social welfare objectives so that they can raise capital as equity, debt or as units like a mutual fund." End of the quote. It took almost 2 years before the concept get further movement. Last September, SEBI board approved the setting of social stock exchange, and then this year, the finance ministry recognized zero coupon, zero principal bond as one of the securities, paving the way for fund mobilization through such exchanges. Since the concept is new and of course innovative, so there are a lot of misconceptions, there are a lot of what I can say, a lot of good things about that, and there are also some kind of apprehensions about that. What we will try to understand from our panelists, how this is going to work, and especially when we talk about microfinance institutions, how that is going to help the microfinance institutions to raise funds through these kind of exchanges, and how this will help in achieving the social goal. So that's my introduction, and before starting the discussion, please give a big round of applause to all of you. Mr. Bhanwala, thank you very much. I know you have been part of the technical committee, and I think you are the best person to understand the DNA of social stock exchange. So, when the companies are talking about PEP, that's the planet, profit, and the people, as a strategy to achieve ESG goals, how this particular exchange is going to help in achieving that?
Can I speak English or Hindi? I would prefer Hindi, but in between English as well.
सर मुझे खुशी होगी मुझे बातचीत करने में हिंदी में साधन होता है
क्योंकि हम माइक्रो फाइनेंस सेक्टर के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं और क्या एक कैपिटल रेजिंग इंस्ट्रूमेंट को इस लायक बनाया जा सकता है कि माइक्रो फाइनेंस की संस्थाएं या माइक्रो फाइनेंस से जुड़े हुए लोग उससे धन अर्जित कर पाए और उसको गेनफुली डिप्लॉय कर पाए। मैं मोटे तौर पर ये समझता हूँ। Look at the present context. You'll allow me a little bit of introduction, and so I'll take a little sure. Present means of organizing funds is by and large binary. Number one. Number two, there is no fundraising based on certain attainables. No, I prima facie go and say, will you do this? What are the possibilities? So basically you are appealing to intent, not outcomes, not impact measure. And again, companies in today's context are more and more conscious of their contributions to the society. Not because suddenly they become more wise, because the sustainability, we have seen epidemics, we have seen environmental catastrophes. In such a background, the entire business scenario undergoes a change. So can you bring some of these considerations in your mainstream business orientation? So basically, what they are saying is, can you marry financial goals with some of the social goals, sustainability goals, impact goals? Why should you conflict? And I think with this background in mind, and with a growing number of investors who are getting conscious, the biggest risk is environmental risk, or COVID we have seen has wiped out all the value that we create for organizations. So appeal to society, appeal to social action, appeal to environmental action, appeal to governance. Within overnight, we have seen entities collapsing. There was nobody to, within the organization, talk about 2008 crisis. We were sitting on one layer of the other, of the securities. Where was the governance? So in this background, I think शिशिर जी, ये महत्वपूर्ण हो जाता है कि हम इन सब चीजों को ध्यान में रख के एक ऐसे प्लेटफॉर्म को विकसित करें जो मल्टीलेटरल हो, ट्रांसपेरेंट हो और जो आउटकम ड्रिवन फंडिंग को बढ़ावा दे। ये क्यों हुआ, कैसे हुआ, वो सब भारत के परिप्रेक्ष्य में, अपने देश के परिप्रेक्ष्य में बात बताऊंगा। लेकिन यह एक नई पहल है जो आने वाले सालों के अंदर याद रखी जाएगी, जो फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने, ऑनरेबल फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने 2019 और 20 के अंदर देश को एक गिफ्ट के तौर पर, समय लगता है, लग गया है। कई एक आध मेरे साथी कहते हैं यार 3 साल हो गए, सोशल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का कोई नाम ही नहीं है। देखिए काफी ऐसी कंसेप्ट्स हैं जो कॉर्पोरेट्स भी 10-10 साल बाद, डेलिब्रेशन के बाद उसको इम्प्लीमेंटेशन फ्रेमवर्क में लाते हैं। आपको वर्चुअल रियलिटी की बात चल रही है, हम वर्चुअल वर्ल्ड मेटा शायद 6-7 साल से काम कर रहे हैं। तो मैं समझता हूँ छोटे समय में काफी काम हुआ है सेबी के द्वारा, और जो कंसेप्ट मैडम ने एक यूनिक कंसेप्ट देश में लाई थी। और मैं आपको एक और चीज बताना चाहता हूँ कि सोशल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज ऐसा नहीं है कि भारत में है। शिशिर जी 7-8-10 देशों के अंदर, तो मुझे याद है, अभी कुछ मैं गिनवा भी सकता हूं, उनके अंदर चले, बहुत तेज गति से नहीं चल रहे, मध्यम गति से चल रहे, या ऑफटेक होने के बाद बिल्कुल इलेटरली फॉर्म में। तो ये भी हमें कहा गया था, क्योंकि आई वाज हेडिंग द टेक्निकल, कि इसको भारतीयता की परिपाटी, भारतीय परंपराओं की परिपाटी पर ये एक्सचेंज खराब होता है ताकि ये आगे जाए। तो इसलिए कई चीजें हमने ऐसी की हैं जो काफी यूनिक है, और मैं समझता हूं काफी क्लोजली जुड़ी है माइक्रो फाइनेंस से, क्योंकि साधन में ज्यादातर मेंबर्स ऐसे हैं शिशिर जी जो माइक्रो फाइनेंस के अलावा काफी कुछ और कर रहे हैं, और सिर्फ प्रॉफिट को ना जोड़ करके, और यही मूल मंत्र है सोशल एक्सचेंज का कि प्रॉफिट के साथ सोशल रिटर्न्स, इम्पैक्ट रिटर्न्स को ध्यान में रख करके पैसे जुटाने का एक माध्यम मल्टीलेटरल, ट्रांसपेरेंट और आउटकम।
थैंक यू सर फॉर नाइस इंट्रोडक्शन। और एक और बात भगवान साहब ये भी कह रहे थे कि जब कभी भी स्टॉक एक्सचेंज हमारे दिमाग में आता है तो पहली चीज जो हम लोग सोचते हैं कि प्रॉफिट कमाना। स्टॉक एक्सचेंज को लेकर के एक ही होता है नोट कमाने का, पैसा कमाने का। If I still remember when this zero coupon, zero principal instrument was recognized as a security, people were very apprehensive that how it will work. Why people will go to these kind of instrument? यहाँ पर कोई पैसा ही नहीं मिलना, प्रिंसिपल भी रिपेमेंट होगा इसकी कोई गारंटी नहीं है, वहाँ पे इनफैक्ट है ही नहीं प्रिंसिपल। So sir, my next question to you that how this kind of instrument will work, and can you please decode this instrument for our audience?
Thank you very much. I think first of all, I think Bhanwala sir is here, so I think he's really encyclopedia, everything he can tell. But what limited and a very nascent understanding I can tell about zero coupon and zero principal bond. It's like a bond that an NFI or any institution lists on a stock exchange. But ultimately, in a bond, in an NCD, you are required to pay the interest and principal at the maturity. In zero coupon, zero principal bond, you don't have to pay. So why the instrument? Basically, this is brought in for the purpose of transparency. I think maybe Bhanwala sir can talk about why it is, but it is for the purpose of transparency that people who are giving donations and giving money to the enterprise which is socially driven or an NGO that is there, so that money is getting utilized in the right way. And also, it's not just the purpose of raising money, it is also over the period of time reporting that how the fund is getting utilized, the enterprise reporting its performance and how the activities are happening. So basically, it also democratizes. So Bhanwala sir talked about the exchange principle is to only bilateral transactions should not happen, multilateral transactions should happen. So a person sitting in Delhi doesn't know about an NGO which is operating in maybe a Kerala or a Tamil Nadu, and so normally how do we donate? We donate by either we know it or somebody refers them that okay, here you can donate the money which is a good organization. But what this stock exchange and this instrument does is that sitting in Delhi I can look at the papers of the organization which is operating in Tamil Nadu or anywhere for that matter, and I can donate money and also look at over the period of time how my money is getting utilized. So basically that is what the instrument is all about.
And before going to Sanjoy, I have one more question. When we talk about zero coupon, zero principal bond, there is one feeling कि ज़्यादातर companies जो अपनी CSR activities को है वो इसके थ्रू channelize करने की कोशिश करेंगे. Although the SEBI notification talked about institutional and non-institutional participation in zero coupon, zero principal bond, but there is a thinking that more and more institutional participation will be there than the non-institutional participation or the individual participation. What is your thought?
I think the design is such that it should promote transparency. I think it is good on the individual part of it, also on the corporate part of it. I can tell you, wearing a hat of a corporate and who has a decent large CSR kind of a budget, we struggle to find viable options where we can get proper documentation and we can prove that okay, we are meeting our social CSR commitments. And it becomes at times very difficult to make sure that it's an arm's length, to make sure that it is meeting the minimum requirement. So if an instrument like this is available, definitely many organization institutions would be interested in a product like this and would be willing to utilize it. But notwithstanding that, any other individual would shy away from this. Most people, when they donate money, want to know what is happening with that money. So I think it should be available, but I tend to agree that it will make it easier for a corporate to allocate money.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Bhanwala.
सिर्फ एक चीज ऐड करना चाहूँगा, आपने बड़ी अच्छी तरह से बताया सदाफ साहब कि जब हम सोशल एंटरप्राइज की बात करते हैं और इम्पैक्ट की बात करते हैं, चाहे वो फॉर प्रॉफिट हो या नॉन प्रॉफिट, उसका अहम बिंदु होता है सोशल रिटर्न्स. तो ये जीरो कूपन, जीरो बॉन्ड, तीन तरह की चीजों की बात. प्रिंसिपल वापस आने की, इंटरेस्ट वापस आने की और फाइनेंशियल रिटर्न्स के अलावा सोशल रिटर्न्स वापस। तो इसमें पहली दो कैटेगरीज के रिटर्न्स वापस नहीं आएंगे, लेकिन सोशल रिटर्न्स आपको विजिबल होंगे और वापस भी। तो ऐसा नहीं है कि ये डोनेशन है और मैं पैसा लेने के बाद कुछ भी करता रहूं और वापस तो करना नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं।
So there will be
this can be recallable provided those social returns are not met, because that will come. I mean, you will get, we are yet to see a first jet C jet E issuance, but unless those kinds of things are in place, otherwise it becomes a multilateral grant donation, which is not being done.
And what I understand sir कि सोशल ऑडिट का भी सिस्टम इसमें हम इवॉल्व करेंगे जिससे कि फर्ड जो आपने जो बात करी वो हो सकता है। संजय, my question is that how the microfinance institutions MFI can take opportunity of such a stock exchange, and especially from the Z0.0 principal bond, what kind of opportunities are available for them?
Right now, at the country level, the microfinance sector is poised for a very exciting and interesting phase. I mean, we just seen as of March 22. Am I audible? As of March 22, I guess there was a credit portfolio of more than 2.5 lakh crore that was outstanding, with more than 100 million active accounts in place. If we look at the entire ecosystem, there have been quite a few positive developments in the recent past. One was removal of the cap by RBI, the lending rate cap that was imposed a few years back. Then the microfinance sector again is poised in a place where different research houses are predicting and seeing, because of the changes in the RBI regulations as also in the changes in the demography and the livelihood options. We are possibly looking at an exponential growth of about 35 to 40% CAGR over the next 4 to 5 years. Though globally it is expected to be around 10 to 12%. So, given this backdrop, given the fact that again the Government of India and various international fora, including the World Economic Forum, they have envisaged that India's working class of women workforce will increase from maybe 27% to the global average, try and inch towards the global average of about 48%. So we could be again looking at another 700 billion roughly of credit flowing into this sector, especially towards the women. So given this exciting future that awaits us, that awaits the microfinance sector, traditional banking sources, which have been the mainstay of the sector, which contributes roughly 80 to 90% of the sector's finances. Definitely there was a requirement to graduate from this traditional system, because the traditional financing system, as we know, it's mostly driven, it's mostly collateral based, it's mostly financial returns based, as Dr. Bhanwala and other panelists Sadaf have mentioned. So we need to look at the regime where the social impacts, the impact which my interventions result, the kind of outreach which I have, specifically with the rural masses. I think more than 78% of the accounts of the MFIs are in the rural areas. So with this kind of backdrop, with this kind of scenario, the social stock exchange provides just the right kind of platform for the MFIs to access the funds. So I mean, personally, yeah, I feel the future does look exciting, and especially in the context of the SSS.
I was just going through a speech by RBI Deputy Governor a day before. There was an event in Mumbai, and he said that in terms of reach, microfinance operations covered 28 states and 9 union territories. That's the entire country. In terms of regional distribution, that's a very important part. In terms of regional distribution, eastern and northeastern regions of the country have the largest share at 37%, followed by south at 27% and west at 15%. Interestingly, when we talk about the financial literacy, Western region has much higher financial literacy, but in terms of microfinance reach, Eastern and South and Northeastern region, and interestingly, Northeastern region also has a very high financial literacy, but Eastern region has a very low financial literacy. So this kind of reach microfinance institutions have, and especially when we talk about social stock exchange or when we talk about these kind of instruments, it will reach in those areas where the financial security, financial literacy, these are at a very low level. Mr. Bhanwala, what kind of challenges you see? किस तरह की चुनौतियां आपके हिसाब से सोशल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज के लिए भारत में, और क्या ये कहा जा सकता है कि भारत तैयार है इस तरह के कंसेप्ट?
भारत तो काफी अपॉर्चुनिटीज है। मुद्दा ये उठता है कि वो अपॉर्चुनिटी भारत तक कब, तो ये पहला प्रयास है। आपको याद होगा माइक्रो फाइनेंस भी जब मिड 90s में SHG की तरफ से चालू हुआ था, या 2000 में MFIs ने इसको आगे लेके गए, तो लोग तैयार थे, ऐसा नहीं कि नहीं। ये कि एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट, एक चैनल, एक सेक्टर उभर के आया और वो वहां गया। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि अगर वो चैलेंजेस सही तरह से पार करें, मैं समझता हूँ वो सोशल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का काफी। अच्छा, वो चैलेंजेस क्या? मुझे याद है जब मैं थोड़ा ज्यादा समय लूं क्योंकि मैं अनुभव है कुछ फील्ड के लिए। मैं जब 1996 की बात है, जब SHG बनाने की मुहिम चली थी, तो RBI ने इंस्ट्रक्शंस भी दे दी, एक नॉन फॉर्मल नॉन लीगल संस्था को आप खाता भी नहीं खोले, उसको जोड़िए फाइनेंसिंग। तो मैं जहां मैं डिस्ट्रिक्ट डेवलपमेंट मैनेजर था, जहां भी हम जाते थे वो बैंक वाले कहते थे क्यों फ्रॉड का काम देता है। तो दिस इज हाउ द एंटायर माइक्रोफाइनेंस वाज, movement was perceived initially. And look at this has become one of the largest movements of the underprivileged. And this is again an instrument of that exchange. You know, primacy of social intent as well as impact, both are important. And what SEBI has said is, they have identified, they have gone beyond, certain things which are not just the SDGs, we have gone beyond SDGs to include some of the things. Relief, rehabilitation, migrant people, incubators, for instance, for promoting the new kind of platforms for promoting all this. Then, which accelerators also included. Then finally, say data protection, because rural people are using digital things, and there is no way they can protect their data. So literacy around it. So some of these things which were not conceived in the SDGs also we have conceived, list of 17 we have. And so it is not just your intent, but your performance in these defined activities with the underprivileged people and with underdeveloped regions or aspirational regions, whatever you call it. And third criteria of a social enterprise which seeks to go through this way and raise funds is that, what extent of impact do you make? So there are three criteria which we talk about. Either 67% of my revenue should come from the revenue of poor. You have hospitals of various types, जिन्होंने जमीन सस्ती ले रखी है और गरीब पांव रखने की हिम्मत नहीं रखते. Should they be covered? Should they be raising money from social exchange? No. Intent आपने लिखा है कि गरीब आदमी का भी इलाज होगा. Outcome? No. So we define 67. And we are very happy that SEBI has said yes. Then similarly, 67% of your expenditure should go. And likewise, also the footfall. Before me, Ams first was saying, इतने लोगों को इतनी जगह, touch points, इतनी lives. This is very natural. So at least 67% should be internal. So I think we have defined it well. And most of these things are very close to microfinance. I remember when he interacted with Buddha Sahib, he's having his own microfinance. Then he was in Cashpor. Cashpor is a leading entity which is involved. I don't want to, there may be others also, please don't mistake me that I'm trying to promote anything. But I remember that. Other than afforestation, literacy, health, forestry is directly with the environment. So most of the NGOs who are members of Sa-Dhan, prohibition, it's a social effect. If somebody wants to, if law and order is not good, why these, all the corporates are joining this? Because they see growth, long-term growth through this. They see long-term advantages in this. One flood, the entire Bangalore was cribbing. You see that?
And still cribbing.
I was happy to see MD going on a tractor of his IT firm, but that's not a news. We should all be traveling by tractors. What is wrong with it? So, what's important is that so much of already action is happening on social. If your employees know that you're working for good of the society, moral, so productivity goes. I'm saying social, environment, governance, all these three things combined together, I'm sure is going to propel. But challenges, one is awareness about social stocking. Challenge is not much. Secondly, जो NGOs हैं, उनको सिक्योरिटीज मार्केट के बारे में भी नहीं पता है भैया। तो हमने एक कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग फंड का सुझाव दिया है। अगर हो सके तो उससे इन्वेस्टर्स की भी कैपेसिटी एनजीओ सेक्टर के बारे में बताया जाए। वो समझते हैं कि एनजीओ मतलब ऐसे ही है, मैं ही हूं जो चला रहा हूं, या आपने ग्रोथ मेरे ही कारण आ, तो ग्रोथ तो भैया अब्जॉर्प्शन कैपेसिटी कौन क्रिएट? इट इज बेसिकली एनजीओ। नो, सप्लाई कम्स फ्रॉम कॉर्पोरेट्स। Many of them also take up the demand creation activity. So these are both challenges. And thirdly, large-scale investments. If somebody has to make, then probably some tweaking in CSR for investments to this. As also, the Foreign Currency Regulation Act. Section 11, foreign investments you have to take permission from Ministry of Home for defined purposes. So those kinds of things, some homework is required on those fronts in the tax. So this is also required.
So आपने जो मैं सवाल पूछना चाह रहा था सईद से वो आप वहाँ पे ले आए हैं।
मैं रोक देता हूँ।
नहीं बिल्कुल सर। So my question to you is that Dr. Bhanwala is talking about the awareness. Dr. Bhanwala is talking also about that what kind of literacy we have about these kind of exchanges as well as these kind of instruments. What kind of strategy these institutions like microfinance institutions should adopt to bring more and more people on board, especially in raising money through social stock exchange or even by the zero coupon, zero principal?
Yeah, I think a very relevant and very interesting question. I think Dr. Bhanwala also talked about, we are talking about a huge social return and a social impact that these institutions are making at the ground. What we need to do is make social return a good word. Unfortunately, I think investment decisions for far too long are only being dependent on ROA, ROE, and everything. All of a sudden, there is a concept of ESG which has come from the West, and everybody now started to look at, okay, yeah, environment, social governance is important. And still, it's at a very nascent stage in India. Globally, a lot of funds have been raised. They remain undeployed because there are not enough avenues to invest those funds, because this money that has been raised is huge, trillions of dollars have been raised. And the only so-called investments are alternate energy and other investments that are happening, but nobody is really focusing on the social aspect of investment. So I think social return has to be made a word which is very, very common, cool and comprehensible. And it has to be, and it will come like organizations like us are now reporting our ESG kind of findings and ESG parameters and everybody. So as soon as people start reporting, I think people will start evaluating and comparing organizations based on their social impact. And when you have that really transparently available, then it will become a easier kind of a sell, because I need your X return capacity, but I give social return in addition to that. So give me more investment or better rates and better return. So I think that is the strategy that institutions would have to adopt. But I think alone, the MFIs or the NGOs can't do it. It has to be from the investor side also. They have to look at that social returns are important. And the way I think Dr. Bhanwala and everybody, we are sitting in capital, we are facing issues of breathing, we have poor quality of air, we have water issues, we have many issues, environmental concerns. So I think this is about time that we realize that social return is equally important and start paying attention to it. And I think if overall ecosystem works, there is enough and more money chasing for these investments and available for these kind of ventures.
And I believe that SEBI has already mandated ESG report as a part of their annual report for various listed companies. So I believe the time will come when all the unlisted companies or even the institutions like microfinance institutions or NGOs, they will also submit their ESG report, so that people will have a clear idea that how the fund is utilized. The important thing is that you are not getting any return, but the important thing is that what kind of satisfaction you are getting. So it's a question between tangible and the intangible return on the asset, on the principle which they have deployed. Before going to the audience, I will take one more question from Sanjoy, I'm sorry. Sanjoy, that one thing normally Indians have about the tax benefit. When they are making any investment, whether it is for return or not for return, one thing always affects them is the tax benefit. Do you think that the government should also announce some kind of tax benefit so that to make it more and more attractive for the people to go for that, even if they are not getting any return?
That's something very interesting and very relevant in the present backdrop. Like before taking this question directly, I'd just like to place before you a small study that was conducted by Charities Foundation, trying to draw a correlation between tax breaks and philanthropy. The results were like in countries where there were tax breaks for philanthropic activities, the donation towards philanthropic causes was about 33% against such countries where tax breaks were not available, and it was roughly, I think, about 21%. So there was a gap of about 12% just in. So this tax does give an inspiration for philanthropic activities, as you have just mentioned, and more so in a country like ours where we are conscious of it. But of course, yeah, the working group in the report, when they are placed for the social stock exchanges, they have already suggested quite a few innovative tax breaks. It begins with, it has suggested that securities transaction tax need not be imposed for transactions on SSEs, and whenever such transactions lead to some kind of capital gains, capital gain tax will also not be imposed. Those are the smaller suggestions in terms of value. The bigger suggestions comes in the form of 100% tax break on investments towards philanthropic activities. Presently, we have a regime where if we invest in non-governmental or non-organizations in having Section 80G benefits, we get a break of about 50% against government. Any government which does it has about 100% break. The report suggests removing this anomaly and giving a 100% even break to everyone. Further, it has, I think, also suggested some removing the cap of 10% of total income towards investment in equities. So overall, the working group has put in a lot of thought based on the tax regime is concerned. So definitely these are some suggestions the government does need to look at very seriously in case we are contemplating that the social stock exchange as envisaged, as thought, would actually bloom in the way we possibly foresee it. And of course, like taking a cue from what Dr. Bhanwala had just mentioned, the intent has been very clear, right? Both in the working group and in the technical committee. In terms of the 67%, that actually filters out a lot of organizations whose intent is social returns, but activity doesn't really reflect it. So this is actually a major filter, and of course there are other filters in terms of number of activities that I think there are 15 activities that have been outlined for this purpose. But having said that, though tax is important, I'll just take a minute more. Our global experience indicates that tax alone may not be sufficient impetus for the social stock exchange to actually prosper, like Dr. Bhanwala had mentioned earlier. We have about 8 social stock exchanges in 8 countries coming up, but presently we have the only ones that are running are in Canada, Singapore and Jamaica, of course, very late infant and in a nascent stage. One of the major reasons, various studies have been done as to why these social stock exchanges could not function, though it all started out with a lot of investments, some even from the Rockefeller Foundation, was that the critical mass that is required for the SSE to function, that was not achieved. So I guess it's though tax is important, but we also need to develop a connect between potential investors and the companies or the organizations that are getting registered or listed on SSE. So this connect, this development of critical mass using maybe the capacity building fund that's there, or maybe even through other outreach programs, that would also propel the growth of maybe the organizations which are getting listed on the SSEs, and of course take the SSE on the trajectory that we feel it should be.
So can we take some questions from the audience? Yeah, please. Can you give the microphone? And please also mention that who should answer you.
Absolutely. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Bonani Roy Chaudhary, CEO of NABCONS Finance Limited, and my question goes to Dr. Bhanwala, sir. Sir, basically we are also into green financing, although it is not in the ambit of SSE, it's more of actual debt financing. So one issue we find is that globally there is a lot of vagueness in not just reporting, but also the assessment, the measurability, the rating and the scoring indices. Because when we look at the supply side, there are people willing to actually invest, but nobody has the patience to go through sustainability reports always. So if there are rating and grading matrices for different activities, that is one thing. So I would like to know what is the thought on that, or what are the actually work that's going on in that direction. The other is that when it comes to the actual borrowers or the beneficiaries of this, they also are very confused about how they should go about it, which of course will bring in the role of consultants here. But still, when they say that, okay, whatever we are doing, how do we know that it's actually giving a benefit in terms of ESG, that kind of an impact, whether it's actually creating, and how do we measure it? Because reports are fine. Reports that say these reports are very comprehensive for every other aspect, but when it comes to the social aspects, when it comes to a grade or a rating score, it becomes easier for both the demand and the supply side to come together. So we would like to know, sir, what are the thoughts on this?
Shishir, the अनुमति दें तो can I speak in Hindi? Number one. Number two, before I answer, one or two responses. I was hearing you as well as my colleague from the right side. Let's not call it philanthropy anymore. And let's not call it invisible return. You said invisible. No, I said no return. There was some reference to invisibility. So, these are visible, tangible. Yes. And somebody is there which is linked there, as I'm answering you now. So 2 institutions we have which is or will be required. There are disclosure norms, like SEBI's listing and regulation norms, quarterly. So you have to mention about annual and all those things. So you have to mention about your outcomes of the social work done. And for that, we have defined, and SEBI has also said, social audit. So there is going to be a class of institutions. Initially, we were reluctant to start saying that anybody could be a ex-auditor or something. We were very careful that initially it would be only reputed entities who should be allowed to be recognized by the regulator. So that's one thing. They will be, certified. This return is coming. That's number one. Number 2, we have also suggested in the technical group another institution which doesn't find a mention, which SEBI said will take time to
analyze the
regulation on, is information repositories. So, somebody monitors the sector, ESG returns, and builds a database. The way CIBIL score related or the repayment habit data is being stored today. And that is available for asking. So that will be online data available. And you say, this entity, 4 or 5 issuances they have done. In 2 met, 3 not met, and those kinds of things. So it will be objectively available for asking. So that's one. I forgot to mention at that time one more point that, what those challenges which you say. I think absence of social audit is also a real world challenge. It will be big 4 or 5. I need not name those big 4. Who will ultimately become social auditors also. Can we have more courses coming up? More consultants, organizations taking up this responsibility of training their employees in social audit. I think that is also a major challenge. Who will certify? And this fee is going to be pretty large. Who pays for the fee? Is it going to be pure investor? Because he's already made some money. So he doesn't want to pay. Will it be capacity building fund? Will it be the NGO? Those kinds of things are going to come. Also, the securities in the stock exchange are pushed by brokers. So brokers in this case are also not knowing. So that's another institution other than investors and the NGO community. They also
the intermediaries
and they are expensive. They will be. So free में कोई काम नहीं करेगा. So can it be if somebody is a broker for 5 mainstream, this thing one has to be obligated for social stock exchange that they have to provide without anything or something. We talked about a lot of things, but let's see, that's an unclear area. The role of brokers and who pays for this. All this is going to be.
Thank you. Can we take another question? Yeah, please. To the lady, please. And please give your brief question.
Thank you. So myself Muthoot, I am from Gramin Foundation, India. So sir, my question is also to Bhanwala sir. So again, as we are talking about, you were mentioning about awareness and financial literacy, and again for the microfinance part, we always been talking about SHGs. So that means the rural, involvement of the rural people, particularly the rural women into this sector. So I just want to understand what would be that, how this kind of new framework, very innovative framework like social stock exchange things, actually can be integrated in the local governance mechanism, because we are now talking about the integration of climate related issues, SDGs into the local development system, and we are having GPDP, Gram Panchayat development plans and all that. So how these kinds of things, what are the capacity building or kind of sensitization or encouragement are there to integrate this kind of knowledge or information into the platform, local governance platform?
देखिए, कई शब्द आपने जैसे ही लिटरेसी कहा तो 3-4 शब्द दिमाग में चले गए। डिजिटल लिटरेसी, फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी, एजुकेशनल रिलेटेड लिटरेसी, हेल्थ लिटरेसी। उसी तरह से हमें अलग अलग टारगेट सेगमेंट करके एक इस तरह की इम्पैक्ट फाइनेंसिंग रिलेटेड लिटरेसी, उसमें सोशल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज भी हिस्सा। सारी चीज जरूरी नहीं है कि सोशल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज के थ्रू ही है। अगर आप अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं तो दूसरी चीजें चलती रहेंगी। हिंदुस्तान में, हमारे देश के अंदर और दूसरे देशों के अंदर भी इम्पैक्ट फाइनेंसिंग होती रही, एक नया जरिया बन रहा। सो इम्पैक्ट अवेयरनेस रिलेटेड लिटरेसी अगर हम कहीं ना कहीं अपने पाठ्यक्रम में ला पाए, वर्ड पे डायरेक्ट बैठने, कई और साधन, you can also start because you are an industry association. No, there is a possibility. So I see a new kind of literacy approach. You know, literacy on environment is also. Yes. आप छोड़िए, मेरा घर रोहतक में है, तो परसों मेरे बराबर में घर बन रहा है, तो सुबह सुबह शनिवार की सुबह थी, तो वो एक लाला जी है बनिए, जो बिजनेसमैन है, वो घर बनवा रहे हैं बड़ा लंबा चौड़ा, तो वो 2 पेड़ थे, उसको कटवाने लगे। सुबह सुबह कट रहे थे वो पेड़, तो मैंने जाके मैंने कहा भैया परमिशन वगैरह, ये लिव इन हुडा सेक्टर, हरियाणा अर्बन डेवलपमेंट, डिड यू टेक सम परमिशन? So this is coming in my way of Vastu, these 2 trees. I don't know who defines Vastu, also I have to question. But thing is, this environmental literacy, social literacy, so frameworks are different. Some of these will be targeted at large scale population, and some of these will be for the NGO sector, which can be taken up by industry. Some of this is going to be for pure investment. So we said, why not NISN? Take this, design some courses for this. So this literacy of knowing your environment, knowing your social fabric, as also the governance within entities will be required, but target segment literacy wise, there will be separate chapters for each of them, which will happen and will apply. Thank you, sir.
Do we have 5 more minutes? Can we take, sir? Okay. We will take one more question from the audience and then we'll wind up the session.
Yeah, my question is very simple. Like SEBI defines now NPO, the participants on the exchange, social exchanges would be there. Do you think that that is the definition not too restrictive? When you are bringing up something new, you have to be a little broader. And my sense is that it is getting too restrictive on that, like 3 years track record or whatever, minimum donations and all those things. So how do you build the institution? That is one question. A second related is that what is the motivation for investor to come to the exchange? Basically, the exchange will only is functional when it has got liquidity. Otherwise, it is not functional. So what is the motivation? Now I've read that SEBI is talking about AIR, etc., to this thing. So is there any way investor satisfaction could be addressed to?
And if I add just one line to this question. When we talk about the normal stock market, we have the market making system, where the two-way quotes can be given. If there is a buyer, then the sellers are the market making system. And since we are talking about the liquidity, since we are talking about the matching quote from the person, so how the system will work? Mr. Bhanwala.
I think SEBI का मैं spokesman कभी नहीं हूँ, so some of these answers would be available with SEBI, but whatever little I know of this thing I can say. No, we were faced with a challenge of defining de novo non-profit, which we never wanted. So any society, trust, already defined by it, so why should I reinvent? So we didn't do that. All are Second, and SEBI accepted. Second question was, you said it's too restrictive. You know, there was a lot of discussion. Ultimately, we want some of the initial issuances to be successful. And there is also a recommendation that these limits are not for all times to come. SEBI can enhance or lower based on how the market goes on. But initially, some of the issuances, if they get through, so we felt that bigger institutions who have been reporting regularly on some of these things and handling a larger amount, they would have systems in place to take up. That's why to begin with we have defined it. It's not to eliminate anybody. So we have suggested in the group also that SEBI is welcome to revise it. Thirdly, market making role, you know, there was a reference by Sanjoy that in some countries it is not gone.
Because of the critical mass he was talking.
So there are operational costs. We were very conscious. So we never said there will be a separate social stock exchange. ये पहली बार है कि एक ongoing exchange ही उसकी एक अलग segment चालू करें. So after studying the foreign systems, we wanted this aspect to be. SEBI has welcomed this idea because they are aware liquidity is required. They are aware that market making is required, and there are people who make the market, and there are processes to make the market. So all those things are well known. I think some of these issues will be there. The two exchanges I am told are already starting with their advisory boards for this. And based on that, probably some of these issues. Keep it conscious.
Before winding up, I will just take one more question for Sayeed and Sanjay. Sayeed, my question is that when the stock market participation is so low in India, why people will go to SSC? Just because they have to get some kind of social return or any other thing?
Yeah, I think we touched this in, just a while ago. Social returns are important. So definitely when we talk about even the microfinance segment, if you look at the nature of investors across in MFIs are somewhat similar investors. So people who are either focused on impact financing or impact investment or looking at some sort of social return, they can have a blend of it. They can have a kind of a commercial returns plus a social returns or pure social returns. So all sorts of investors exist. So I think that is where we would have to find. So market making process is very important. Then we will discover that how many more people are there who are purely driven by social returns and how many people are expecting to have some sort of a commercial return alongside or some sort of an impact assessment to be done post the investment and stuff. So I think too early to judge, but by global example, and I think going by the foreign kind of regulation, because regulation is very different in those countries versus ours, so stock exchanges are not really very few. There are multiple stock exchanges which exist and they trade. So there are examples where good amount of money getting traded, and it has been evolving over the period of time. It's a very, very early stage. So it will take some time, but in my opinion, just like Bhanwala sir explained how microfinance from 1990s to today has become a kind of a destination of many investment, tomorrow this will also see.
Sanjoy, my final question to you, that apart from the fundraising, what kind of role MFI will have in making the concept of SSC a popular one? Like we are talking about capacity building, we are talking about literacy. So how do you suggest, what kind of suggestions you can give in making this concept successful?
Yeah, fundraising obviously, I mean, that's one of the major activities that we see. MFIs like to take up as part of the SSCs. But yes, the kind of outreach which the MFIs have, which we have just mentioned some time back in reference to the eastern and the northeastern part of the country, yes, the kind of penetration which the MFIs have at the moment, and which is likely to spike exceedingly well over the next 4 years, if figures are typically regarding the projections. So definitely it can supplement the efforts of the social stock exchanges in terms of taking investor knowledge, SSC knowledge regarding these, basically through its clients in the remotest part of the country. The MFIs can help disseminate the knowledge, which possibly would broad-base the investing. Presently, when we talk of this kind of investments, at the country level, we see basically it's confined to a few high net worth individuals or a few reputed houses who are known to be investing in this kind of social impact investors. But possibly the outreach of the MFIs could supplement the efforts of the SSCs in taking this knowledge and broad-base the investors. That's one way I foresee that MFIs could support the SSCs. And another way is, like given the list of activities, given the stringent qualifying filters which are there, of the 67% of the revenue coming from activities which are actually creating an impact in the lives of people, the MFIs could take a leadership role in coming out with corporate governance guidelines in terms of how prepared one is to first register and then list on the SSCs, because not all those who register would possibly be listing immediately. So there the MFI can actually, because they are the larger entities who would be expected to participate in the SSCs to begin with, I see they playing a leadership role in this segment also.
So that's the end of this panel discussion. And whenever there is a new concept, there is always some apprehension, how it will work. So the basic question is whether it is a chicken or the egg. That's the question which will always be there. And this is not the concept which is not going to fall into that category also. So what we understand and what I get the sense from this panel discussion, that this concept will work. It may take some time. There will be people who will have some kind of hesitation whether I should come or not. But I'm sure and I'm hopeful that with the participation from MFI, this concept will work in coming 5 to 10 years. So thank you very much for participating in this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sinha, for moderating this session. As we said, we've come to an end of the session. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'd also like to extend our heartiest gratitude to each one of our panelists here, Mr. Sadaf, Sayeed, Mr. Sanjoy, Ghosh, and Dr. Bhanwala for sharing with us your expertise. I'm going to request you, Mr. Sinha, on behalf of all of us here at Sa-Dhan, we have little credentials that we'd like to present to each one of our speakers here. If you could present those to Dr. Bhanwala, Mr. Sayeed, and Mr. Ghosh. Let's all have a round of applause, everybody, for these gentlemen here. I'm going to request Mr. G.G. Mammon, ED and CEO Sa-Dhan, to kindly present a memento to Mr. Shishir Sinha and thank him for flawless moderation there. So with that, we end this session, and I'm sure everyone needs a cup of tea. We'll break for only 15 minutes. We've again run out of time, I'm sorry. 15 minutes it is. Please feel free to